welcome to News Nation, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, in for Chris Cuomo. By the way, you know why Chris isn't here? Passed his firefighter exam, and tonight he has his first official meeting as a voluntary firefighter. Congratulations, wishing him luck, stay safe. But now we got to talk about the economy. We got to get into this. So the two parties have been battling over who owns the affordability issue. They're blaming each other for the rising costs. Last night, President Trump gave a big speech at a casino in Pennsylvania to kick off his national affordability tour. And the president touted the success of his economic policies instead of maybe, listening to his aides who reportedly wanted him to empathize more with Americans' economic worries. Take a look.
They have a new word. They always have a hoax. The new word is affordability. And I have no higher priority than making America affordable again. That's what we're going to do. And again, they caused the high prices, and we're bringing them down. It's a simple message. You're getting lower prices, bigger paychecks. We're getting inflation. We're crushing it. It was just reported that 4 states had $1.99 a gallon. My favorite word is tariff. Tariffs are bringing us hundreds of billions of dollars. America is respected again, and the United States is back.
So our voter is going to buy what he's selling. When I ask somebody who oftentimes has the ear of the president, author of the New York Times best-selling book, Confronting Evil, Bill O'Reilly joins us. Bill, thank you so much for coming on. It's good to see you. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is you said the president yelled at you when you said, listen, be a little bit empathetic with the American people, the pain that they're feeling regarding the economy. You watched the speech last night. Do you think he listened to your advice?
Well, he was annoyed with me for concentrating on the negatives because that's President Trump's style. He doesn't want to see the glass half empty. And he likes the press to go along with what his vision is. So whenever I report something that isn't favorable to Mr. Trump, he gets annoyed with me. It's human nature. I understand it. It doesn't bother me. I report the truth. But I was a little surprised last night because I felt that President Trump would use an hour and 36 minutes to reassure people about their own personal circumstance. What he did do was reassure them about the direction of the country. There's a difference. So he took a macro view rather than a micro view. And I thought that maybe the speech writers, and Donald Trump reads those speeches and edits them himself. It's not like Joe Biden. Joe Biden, just whatever they gave me read. Trump's involved with that, just like Barack Obama was. He's got the pen, he's this and that. So when I made some calls today to find out what the strategy was, I learned a lot. And this could change at any moment, Jesse. What the Republican strategy is now is to have Donald Trump campaign again the same way that he did it in 2024. Is that we're on the road, you just heard him. We're back. We're magnificent. All this tariff money is going to come in and pay off. We're building something here that's going to be rock solid. Now, he doesn't say you got to be patient, which of course you do have to be if you buy into his vision. I mean, he doesn't have a magic wand, all right? But he is going to be the point man on the midterms, not the individual candidates. And isn't that interesting? So he's going to be one very busy guy next year, running the country and then trying to convince the American people to allow him the power of the House and the Senate.
The word that you said was convince, and I think that's really interesting because here's the part about it. There's no one that campaigns like him. There's no one that holds rallies like him. He really wasn't on prompter last night. I think that's arguably when he does best. The issue is, why say affordability is a hoax? You mentioned campaign like 2024. Things have changed. Grocery prices up 1.4%, consumer prices up 1.7%. Tariff rate went up 13.6%. It is a different world, and you wonder, despite that, are people going to believe it? I mean, there was the whole thing with President Joe Biden where saying the economy was one thing and people were feeling something else. So that's the question after last night. Are people going to feel that? Are they going to believe that?
Depends where you are. So the people who don't like Donald Trump or are skeptical about him aren't going to believe it. The people who do like him and don't have much regard for the Democratic Party are going to give him some rope. But he's annoyed about the word affordability because it's a coordinated effort, came out of K Street. They do that every morning. They send faxes out to people sympathetic to the Democratic Party. And it says, let's concentrate on affordability. Let's get affordability into every paragraph we say. And that's exactly what happened. Trump knows the game. He's seen it before. The same phrases, the same words, over and over and over. And it really gets him angry. And the Republican Party has nothing like that. Maybe they should, but the propaganda machine on the left is far superior to the propaganda machine on the right. It drives Trump nuts. Now, when you read the stats, the American people, depending on where you live, aren't in dire straits. And 60% have accounts, whether they be retirement or 401ks or college, and they're going through the roof. They're going through the roof. And people's wealth is increasing. But you will never hear that from the establishment corporate media. Never. That drives Trump nuts. So he's looking for fairness. He's never going to get it, ever. Now, if I were him, I would have my speechwriters be specific. So look, and I do that. I say, here's what food is going down is affordable, and here's what isn't. So I told my viewers and listeners, don't buy steak. Don't buy it. It's up 39%. What are you, crazy?
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned the steak, right? Because if you talk about the steak, right, isn't it not just a demand issue? It's also a supply issue that, was maybe caused by the tariffs before they were taken away. No, but I think that's an important point, isn't it not? The tariffs having an effect regarding supply.
It depends how much you like steak. If every American listened to me and didn't buy steak, Jesse, I guarantee you in 2 weeks, steak would drop 25% in price. That's what happens. That's capitalism.
Okay, I hear exactly what you're saying. And I agree. There are times when he doesn't get enough credit for the price of drugs or eggs or cars or beef or fruit. But then why, and although his approval went up 3%, from 38% to 41%, approval on cost of living specifically, is only at 31%. Now, that's up from 5% from November, but 31%. And goes back to something you mentioned, campaigning for the midterms. That is a number you wonder if people are going to say, do I want the president campaigning for me on the economy if it's 31%?
Well, they have no choice because the Republican Party has no message, none. So it's either Trump or you die. And the numbers that you're seeing are driven, a lot of them, by insurance costs. That's the big problem the Republican Party has. So the insurance is absolutely insane in this country. Car, home, health. And the Republicans are sitting there going, they have nothing. Get something if you want to hold a House and the Senate. Trump's not going to be able to do it for you, I don't think. I could be wrong. Guy's a magnificent campaigner. He really is. But if you don't start to bring down the cost of insurance, which is really
100%.
the hammer.
100%.
Okay.
You make a great point.
If you don't start to do that,
you make a great point.
It's going to be.
So shouldn't
and
this
here's
be the time?
One more.
Yeah. Okay.
Trump went through this in his first term. Republicans lost 41 seats in the House in the midterms.
100%.
He knows the danger.
But shouldn't this be the time to focus on affordability legislation instead of giving speeches? So, health insurance, housing, student debt, the rebate checks.
No, because the Democrats aren't going to cooperate. Democrats won't cooperate. You can do legislation all day long. You're not going to get it through.
But he doesn't really need them. He's got control.
In the Senate.
He's got control, though, on those issues. No,
he doesn't. He needs 60 votes in the Senate to advance legislation, and they're never going to help him. So what has to happen is the Republican Party has to come out and say, here's our health care plan. This is what we want to do. We don't believe the Democrats are going to support it. And then you can go on offense. Then you can say, we have a plan. But these dastardly people who hate Trump, they're going to just blow it up. They don't care about you. So you take the high ground. But if you think the Democratic Party in the Senate are going to break ranks and vote for any Republican legislation that lowers, they're not.
You don't think there's common ground? You don't think there's common ground? Because Nancy Mace even came out and was like, he shouldn't be saying it's affordability is a hoax. You don't think there's common ground on some of those economic issues?
Was that before Nancy Mace cursed out the airport or after?
Well,
you know, look,
yeah.
I don't care about these people. I just know that the game is rigged and it's not looking out for the folks. Yep. So if you're a Republican, if you're President Trump, you go, here's the plan. Here's what we want to do. And those people aren't going to cooperate because they hate me and they hate Republicans. That way you seize the higher ground, and that way you can campaign on something. Right now, all the Republicans are campaigning on is Joe Biden, how terrible he was. And all the Democrats are campaigning on, the only thing they have is Trump's the devil.
Well, no, they're also campaigning on the affordability issue. I mean, look at this. That is momentum.
Yeah, what's their plan, Jesse?
Look what happened. Look what happened in Miami. Look what happened in Miami. The mayor's race, Democrat. That was the first time in 30 years. We just saw what happened a couple months ago. They're going to keep on doing this. I mean, that is
what
a
happened in
Miami.
Miami. What happened in Miami was a Homeland Security is too hard. That's why she won. Because Hispanic Americans, they mostly support immigration law, but they don't want the heavy hand. They don't. But you said something. Why don't Democrats campaign on affordability?
There's a million on the There's a million on the ACA, though. There's a million on the ACA as well. That's an issue. It can't just be on one issue.
Look, I'm looking for a solution. Have you heard a solution from the Democratic Party on how to bring down insurance costs in this country? Have you?
No, what I can say is they're making it an issue. They're making enough an issue, yes, to demonize the Republicans, to demonize Trump, but it seems to be working.
Yeah, but believe me, that can change fast. Just like Trump's approval is up, okay, because of what he's doing to the drug dealers. That's why it's up, because most people want them blown to hell. That's why that number is up. You know, the press doesn't want it. Oh, you can't do that. The regular folks who know how horrible this drug trafficking is, every time a boat is blown out of the water, they're giving him a standing O. That's why his numbers are up.
Well, there would be the counter-argument to that. There are polls out there who would suggest they're not in favor of this military action towards the vessels, right? There would be those who say, why are we getting involved in this?
I haven't seen that poll. Harvard-Harris came out yesterday and was overwhelming that the American public want to hold the drug cartels accountable. Overwhelming number.
Well, look, that is actually a great tease, because that's what we're going to talk about next. Bill O'Reilly, I appreciate you coming on, talking about this. It's an interesting discussion. We'll see if the president heeds your advice. But thank you so much. Good seeing you.
Thanks for having me. And you guys should get a picture of Cuomo in his little fire hat. He's running around out Eastern Long Island, little fire hat.
You don't think I have that image in my mind already? Yeah. I don't need a picture. I already have it in my mind. I already know what it looks like. It's not going to be as good as what I have
I want to see it.
Okay, you got it. We'll put it up. Thanks, Bill. Good seeing you. All right. Up next, so today, the White House announced that it has seized an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. And we're going to show you the video. Looks like it came right out of a movie. And this comes, by the way, on the heels of their controversial boat strikes, which Bill and I were just talking about. So, does this move bring the United States a step closer to war with Venezuela? Earlier today, the White House announced that it seized a Venezuelan oil tanker. You're looking at video right now of armed U.S. personnel military personnel boarding that tanker from a chopper. Now, the president refused to say where the tanker would be taken. But remember, this comes on the heels of the GOP chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Mike Rogers, saying that there's no further investigation that's needed into that double tap strike on a drug boat. So the question is, are we seeing an escalation that could lead to an imminent war with Venezuela? I want to bring in retired Brigadier Army General Mark Kimmitt and former military JAG lawyer Margaret Donovan. Thank you both so much for coming on. General Kimmitt, I'll start with you. What would be the justification for seizing a tanker like this? I'll get into what this seizure warrant says, but what would be the overall goal here to seize something like this?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's important to understand this is not a Venezuelan tanker. In fact, its name isn't even Skipper. This was the Odessa, a ship that had been sanctioned by the United States for illegal transportation of Iranian oil that was supporting both Lebanese Hezbollah and the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. So I think the media has it wrong. It's not Venezuelan, and it wasn't seized for activities related to...
But a spokesperson for Venezuela came out and was pretty upset about this. So why would they be upset if it's not their tanker?
I'm upset of a lot of things, too. That doesn't make me right.
No, but why would they care if it's not their tanker?
Because it had Venezuelan oil in it.
So that's an issue. That's an escalation.
Sure, but it's important to also recognize Venezuela is sanctioned as well. And so as a result, seizing of assets under the Foreign Terrorist Organization designation is entirely appropriate. We seized 5 oil tankers in 2019 and 2020 that belonged to Iran. So this has got precedent, and it also has Foreign Terrorist Organization sanction authority as well.
Margaret, if this was seized pursuant to a seizure warrant, so a judge had to sign off on it, and you're listening to General Kimmitt, right? This was about the oil, that it was part of this illegal shipping network that was funneling or fueling a terrorist organization. Is there anything wrong with this? Any concern?
Yeah, look, if they procedurally went to a judge, they got a seizure warrant, this is pursuant to sanctions that were in place by the Office of Foreign Assets Control, by the Treasury Department, then this actually is not quite as sensational as, it may seem, except that it is the final sort of act in a long line of aggressive behavior by the United States in and around Venezuelan territory, starting first with the summary executions of civilians in Venezuelan waters through those airstrikes, declaring a no-fly zone over the country or attempting to, and reports that there were armed aircraft flyovers over the past few days. So while ordinarily this type of seizure, it sounds at least, and I'm learning it at the same time that you all are, it sounds like it was in accordance with DOJ and Treasury standards. When you put it in context with everything else, it certainly seems like an intentional escalation in that region.
See, General Kimmitt, that is a good point. In the idea, if this was a random seizure from a year ago, we would say, oh, wow, okay, this is the work of the United States government to try to curb an illegal terrorist organization. Great work. But in the larger context, and if you're talking about Venezuelan oil, which will have an economic impact on Venezuela, perhaps, the stranglehold on energy, is this a concern where you think that this could mount to further escalation? And what would be a response, a potential response from Venezuela?
Yeah, well, first of all, let's be clear. There was no-fly zone. What was announced by the president was what the aviators call a notice to airmen, a NOTAM, that nothing more than that. Second, I think the most important thing is there hasn't been any substantive proof that this was a summary execution of, in this case, some people believe them to be fishermen. And third, I think it's important to understand that the larger context is the fact that I don't think anybody would have any problem attacking these ships if they were carrying huge amounts of ammunition and weapons coming to the United States. But in fact, more Americans would die from a boatload of fentanyl than probably from about 100 of these fishing boats. So as a matter of national security, of which the president has the prerogative, I think that if in fact these were boats carrying a significant amount of drugs heading to the United States, I don't consider that summary execution. I just consider that the responsibility of the president and his national security requirements.
Now, Margaret, I know you have some thoughts on that. The counter-argument to be, you heard General Kimmitt, the other part of it would be, well, their argument is they were still a threat, that they were communicating for help, that they were trying to salvage these drugs, and if you listen to General Kimmitt, drugs that could kill Americans. So what would your response be to that?
Well, with all respect to that argument, those facts are not in play here. The boats were not carrying weapons and ammunition, and the boats were not carrying fentanyl. They were carrying, at best, cocaine. And even if you were to say that cocaine could potentially when combined with other drugs and when requested, by the way, by users in America, perhaps could lead to some amount of overdose deaths. No doubt drugs are bad, I get it, but those facts are totally different than what's happening here. And the boats, it turns out, at least the September 2nd strike, and we're not sure, we're waiting for the facts on the rest, we're not headed to the United States, nor do that size of boat carry enough fuel to make it to the United States. So the issue of imminence, which may support some type of self-defense strike here, is not present. And that's even assuming that the boats were carrying something that was inherently, as deadly as fentanyl or as bombs or as ammunition. If we were talking about those things, we might be in a totally different ballgame. If we had congressional authorization to go after and to use military force against targets like these, we might be having a different conversation, but those facts aren't in play. For everything that we know so far, those boats were carrying cocaine. We haven't heard anything about fentanyl. And by the way, the Coast Guard has been interdicting these boats without lethal force for decades, as recently as months ago. And you can ask the Coast Guard further statistics on how often they have been able to do that without using lethal force and without dragging the country into this controversial campaign where we are alienating our allies. So if we are gearing up for land operations or for further escalation in Venezuela, we're certainly doing a lot to isolate ourselves from the other countries who might help us in that effort.
General Kimmitt, are you worried, concerned that it's a little loosey-goosey in terms of the rules of war? I mean, one of the things to be thinking about is this wasn't a military vessel that was blown up. And by the way, just to let everybody know, so Representative Mike Rogers of Alabama, the Republican chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, said yesterday, it's done. I've got all the answers I needed on this double tap, on the tapes. You wonder, what does that mean? Is that the end of this? Is this a way to protect the administration? But on the other hand, General Kimmitt, Chairman Rogers says he still plans to invite all committee members to a classified briefing next week to see the tapes. Is this the end of the conversation or not? Because again, the question is it a little bit of loosey-goosey in terms of the rules of war? And if this wasn't even a military vessel, those people on board, do they even know officially how to surrender if this was a military attack? I think that's the concern, what really happened. So after these comments from Representative Mike Rogers, General Kimmitt, where does this investigation go?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me make a couple of points. I dealt with this problem at the State Department in 2008 when we were fighting piracy off the coast of Somalia. So a lot of these issues have come up before, and a lot of them have been solved. But I just want to make sure we understand that blaming the victim, which are the American families who died from the use of those drugs, by somehow blaming them for the use of those drugs, I find reprehensible. Second, we've had 100,000 people in America die from drugs over the past year, I believe. And I think we've got to do what other presidents have said, which is have a war on drugs. What is happening here is exactly what Joe Biden recommended in 1979, a strike force to go against drugs in South America at their base. So I would simply say if it was good enough for Joe Biden and it's good enough for President Trump, I'm sure the lawyers can work out the details, but
well, those details do matter. And again, General Kimmitt, I just want to ask you about this. Hold you this. Do you think there's going to be a further investigation based on these multiple comments from Chairman Rogers about is there going to be an inquiry or not? Is it the end of the conversation or not?
Well, judging by the number of Democrats that are rushing to the microphones right now to express horror at this, I'd say probably not. I mean, Chuck Schumer has done that, but very few others have. But we'll wait and see. I mean, the very fact that they found out, which people didn't recognize, that Admiral Howard spent an hour deliberating before he conducted that second strike, I think they're starting to understand that the media hype and what we're seeing on the screens, in general, as you would say, may be considered loosey-goosey. But in fact, I think at the end of the day, and I may be wrong, but I think at the end of the day that on this issue of the second strike and the continuation of this program, the administration feels that they're on solid legal footing and will continue to do this.
Margaret, you think there should be an inquiry?
Absolutely. I do not think that the public has enough facts, and I don't think anybody will be any worse for it if we actually just learn more of the actual facts of what happened. I think that there should be a full inquiry, and the public has a right to know how their military is being used.
Margaret, real quick follow-up. Do you know what happens to the oil Anybody know who legally has the right to the oil that was seized as part of this tanker? Do you know?
That's a very good question. I've heard the president wants to keep it. And if it's subject to sanctions, that the maintenance of seized assets is actually a very real problem that spans different administrations. So I suppose that'll be up to the administration to solve.
Conversation for a different day.
Maybe they can park them next to the Russian yachts that we've seized, so we've done this before. There's nothing new under the sun in terms of what's going on here.
All right, General Mark Kimmitt, Margaret Donovan, thank you both so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next, the president promised it was coming and it arrived today. Trump's literal gold card to citizenship. White House says if you can cough up $1 million, you can fast track permanent residency in the United States. The question is, what happens if you don't have $1 million? Should the rich be able to go to the front of the line? We're going to debate that next.
Why is it we only take people from shithole countries, right? Why can't we have some people from Norway, Sweden, just a few? Let us have a few.
Well, I'll tell you what, President Trump's plan to get more people from places like Norway just became a reality. Here's why. Today, Trump's long-awaited gold card to citizenship became available, which means if you have $1 million to buy one, you can skip the line and obtain permanent residency in America. Corporations, they have the opportunity to spend $2 million if they want one for their employees. So should the size of your wallet make you more worthy of citizenship? So I asked the host of the Aggressive Progressive podcast, Chris Hahn, and the GOP candidate for California Governor, Steve Hilton. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming on. Chris, I'm struggling to figure out why this is a bad thing, right? If you're talking about market-based, merit-based, maybe top the line, coming into the country, we know the whole process the way it usually is red tape, it's bureaucratic. Why is this a bad thing?
Because entry into the United States and citizenship here is not like getting a membership at Mar-a-Lago, right? We all have our immigrant stories. Not a lot of them have millions of dollars to spend on citizenship. They all have struggles, and they came here to escape those struggles and build better lives for their families. I am the grandson of immigrants on both sides of my family. One side escaped Hitler, the other side escaped Mussolini. And they ran for their lives with only the clothes on their backs, and they built a good life here in America, and they contributed to our society. President Trump believes that only the rich are worthy of anything. And if you are a supporter of his right now and you are not a multimillionaire, he could care less what you think.
Well, Steve, what do you think? You think that wealthy people, wealthy corporations should skip the line, have the ability to do that?
Well, Chris and I, we have a lot in common on that front. You know, my parents were refugees from communism in Hungary. I grew up in England, and now I'm an immigrant here to America, building a new life here. And I agree with much of what Chris said, but it's not the only type of immigration we've had in America. And in fact, this program is a revamping and a simplification of a program we've already had, the EB-5 visa program in America, where the idea was to attract entrepreneurs with investment ideas for America, same amount of money, $1 million. In the 25 years of that program, barely 200,000 people have actually managed to get through the bureaucratic process. What they're trying to do here is to speed it up, simplify it, and make sure that, as a lot of people make the case, that we need immigration to keep America growing and thriving and flourishing. And we need all kinds of immigration as long as it's legal. And so, yeah, I'm in favor of this, just as I'm in favor of legal immigration across the board, including for the kind of refugees that Chris rightly mentions.
Before I ask Chris's take on this, Steve, would you pay $1 million?
Oh, sorry. Well, I didn't have to. We
Would
came
you?
in
Would you?
the
Would you pay $1 million?
old-fashioned way.
Would you pay $1 million?
If I had the investment, if I had the ability to make that kind of investment, there's nowhere better to start and grow a business than America. Of course you'd want to be here. And of course we want to attract great people who can contribute to the great story of this country and keep us growing.
Steve Hilton Investment Fund. I like it. All right, Chris, so why is this different? Why is this different than past programs where you link money to citizenship? We've seen that before. Why is this one different?
EB-5 doesn't necessarily grant you citizenship. You still have to go through the process. It grants you a visa to come here and invest money here. And sometimes the EB-5 is actually for the money itself, not even for the individual attached to it. So it's very, very different, and it's about building businesses here within the United States of America. And then you have to go through the citizenship process on top of the EB-5 process, which is why it is so arduous, because becoming a citizen in the United States of America is a precious thing. And I got to tell you, when the President of the United States is halting citizenship ceremonies up in Massachusetts over the last couple of days for people who did everything right and followed the rules to become citizens in this country because he didn't like where they came from, I think we've got to reevaluate, what it means for, what presidential power means in this area. And I think that this president is being very un-American, unfair. And, I think he should come back to New York, go to the harbor, and look at the statue and read the poem.
Well, it's not saying people can't come in. What it is saying is giving an opportunity for people to fast track, Chris. I guess the question would be if it's two things, right? Two benefits. Money coming in, not a bad thing. And they still have to go through a full verification process, I would imagine. Kristi Noem said it's a vigorous vetting process. I mean, they still have to go through it. So money coming in, and it's why is it a bad thing? And again, if they can afford it or be sponsored by a corporation, is that really that different than what we've seen, let's say, from H-1B1? H-1B.
This president values money over all else. I would not trust a vetting process attached to $1 million in the hands of this president. Not once, not ever.
You're so cynical.
You got $1 million, great.
You're so cynical.
Come on in. Yeah, I mean, look at. I mean, money is his thing. It's his god, right? I think that America is a place where.
Yeah, I hear you.
America is a place where
I just want Steve to jump in because I hear what you're saying. You question whether or not someone might be able to buy their way through. I get it in a way, or skip through it. Steve, just what's your response to that?
So look, the American people spoke very clearly at the last election that they wanted our immigration system to be brought under control, managed properly, the border closed, immigration controlled. There is massive public support for immigration as long as there's government control of immigration. The last administration lost control of it. And what's interesting is you still see Democrats, right here in California, for example, we've just seen a proposal from San Francisco totally in line with that extreme open borders ideology, the first in the nation kind of law to block immigration enforcement from using city facilities. This is not what people voted for. We want immigration, but it has to be properly managed and controlled. And I think this is part of that.
Well, Steve, I'll counter that for a second. So a big part of the immigration debate right now is we're seeing illegal immigrants or people coming into the country who commit crimes. And that becomes the wave, right? That becomes the talking point against immigration or against illegal migration. What happens if somebody goes through this program, pay $1 million, maybe $2 million through a corporation, they commit a really bad crime? I mean, is this something that could backfire against the Trump administration?
Well, I imagine that they'll then be targeted for removal under the current approach to illegal immigration, which is if you're here illegally and on top of that original breaking of the law, you commit another crime, then you've got to get out. And that is a massively widely held, widely supported view across the board in America, across all political parties. And it's just common sense. If you're a guest in this country, it's the proudest thing. Exactly as Chris said, it's incredible honor to become an American. There is no higher honor in this whole area of discussion than to become an American. But if you abuse that by breaking our laws, then you need to be kicked out.
No, it's 100%. Chris, I'll give you the final word. You think people are going to jump on board on this?
Oh, of course they will. I think that there will be lots of takers for this around the world. I mean, who wouldn't want to come here? And if you have the money to do it, great, come on over. But I think it's not a replacement for comprehensive immigration reform in this country. And I agree with Steve. Americans voted for immigration reform, but nobody has given them anything other than a closed border. And yes, that's what they wanted. But they also want immigration reform because they do understand that this country was built on the back of immigrants, and the continuing refreshment of people coming into this country with fresh ideas has been great for America.
Chris Hahn, Steve Hilton, thank you both for coming on. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next. Is it possible that the man who allegedly assassinated a healthcare CEO in cold blood on the streets of New York City could walk free due to what his lawyers believe was bad police work? New police body cam video of the day Luigi Mangione was arrested in that McDonald's out in Altoona, Pennsylvania, has been released. What story does it tell about how the cops did their job? We're going to show you, and we're going to let you decide. That's next. Can a man really shoot someone in cold blood on the streets of New York City and get away with it? Well, we're talking about alleged CEO shooter Luigi Mangione. His attorneys are trying to do just that. They claim his rights were violated by police the day he was arrested in that McDonald's in Pennsylvania. They want all the evidence they collected from his backpack thrown out, the gun, the ammunition, his notebook, on the grounds that the police didn't obtain a search warrant. Well, now you have new body cam video of that arrest. It's just been released. We're going to show it to you in a minute, but first, it's important to understand the timeline here, okay? So on December 9th, 2024, at 9:14 a.m., the manager at McDonald's called 911 saying that customers thought a man eating there looked like the CEO shooter. 9:29 a.m., Altoona police arrived at the McDonald's. 9:41 a.m., Mangione's fake license was shown to the police. 9:58 a.m., he's arrested on forgery related to a fake ID. And as soon as he was arrested, a cop started searching his backpack and continued searching it once they got to the station. Now that you've seen the timeline, we've got to take a look at the body cam footage of when police first confronted Mangione. Take a look.
Yes, sir. There you go. Can you put your mask down real quick for me? Yeah, sure. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. What's your name? Mark. What is it? Mark. Mark? Yes, sir. Mark what? Rosario. Rosario? Someone called. They thought you were suspicious. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have your ID on you? Yeah, yes, sir. Thanks. Probably should look like someone. You okay to? You want to run? Where are you from? Player 6, 2729 out of New Jersey.
Does that video help or hurt the defense? I want to bring in New York City's top cop during the hunt for Mangione, retired NYPD Chief of Department John Chell, and criminal defense attorney Mark Garagos. Thank you so much for coming on. John, I'll start with you. A, where does that video fit into the piece of the puzzle? And B, did police do anything wrong whereby his statements to the police or any of his belongings will not be allowed into evidence?
All right. As far as his statements go, by the officer's own admission, he said as soon as he took his mask down, he knew it was him. I think he had a probable cause right there to make that arrest. Not to mention the fact that the partner's running the ID, and it's also a fake with probable cause to arrest. Anything questioning beyond that has to stop. You cannot ask any more questions. Custody questioning equals Miranda. Now, as far as the bag goes, they made a tactical error here. At this point, when they first walk in, that reasonable suspicion, they could pat that bag down. But since they're a probable cause and he had immediate control over that bag, they should have did that bag right there for no reason their safety. And the officer says, I knew that gun was recovered. But now you have search incidental lawful arrest, and you also have an inventory back at the precinct. So I think Judge Carroll is somewhere along the line is going to throw out some statements. Well, he'll go with an inevitable discovery here that the gun would have been discovered during a normal course anyway.
Let's talk about that. So, Mark, right, the counter-argument to that would be, well, listen, he wasn't in a custodial interrogation. He was free to leave. He's eating his chicken nuggets, gives a fake ID, tells him a fake name. Okay, now you're talking about a crime being committed. And plus, you couple that with the idea of what his clothing is, he's suspicious. And then the bag, right, would be searched incidental to arrest. They might have thought that there was a threat. They're under the law. They can do an inventory search of a suspect. And like John just said, there is this concept in the law, inevitable discovery doctrine. They would have been able to get that evidence anyway. A judge might forgive it in a way. Your response?
That the interesting thing about this case is you've got parallel prosecutions, both federal and state. And the law on the searches differ federally in New York State. I'm not so sure that the inevitable discovery at that point, based on this body cam and based on the other numerous witnesses that they've shown, is going to carry the day. I do agree on the statements and where I think prognosticating where the judge is going to come out. I'm not so sure on the search. And by the way, in cases like this, I wouldn't bet on a search being suppressed under almost any circumstances in this high profile of a case. But for the very reason I said, knowing you've got a backstop of the feds and a different standard for the inevitable discovery, I think this judge, he may, and it's slim, I wouldn't bet on it, but he may say that the search was illegal.
So I guess the question is, John, why didn't they get a search warrant? There was the discussion, right, about do we need one, do we not need one? Why didn't they get a search warrant, and why didn't they read him his Miranda rights immediately?
Well, the Miranda rights, I think their intent, even though intent has nothing to do here, I think they were just trying to make small talk because he was working with a rookie. I think he was waiting for the troops to arrive. But that doesn't mitigate Miranda. He had probable cause, no more questions, talk about the weather, talk about the burger he's eating, leave it at there. Again, as far as the gun goes, I'm a firm believer that the search was contemporaneously in the parking lot. I'm not putting, in my experience, I'm not putting a bag in the car without taking a quick peek to see what's in it for my own safety, and then inventory back at the precinct. But I will tell you this: I've handled many murder cases as a chief of detectives in Brooklyn, and I wish there was a detective that to kind of take custody of that and say, let's be safe and let's get the search warrant. You would have the same result.
Mark, real quick, 20 seconds. If this all gets tossed, let's say everything gets tossed, can they still prosecute him successfully?
On the state side, it's an uphill battle. But remember, you've got the feds standing right behind you, and they've been doing a tug of war to see who goes anyway. Nothing would make the feds happier than for them to step in. And I agree, the detective is absolutely right. You know, given the circumstances, when you look at the videos, the better part of valor here would have been to just wait. There was no reason not to.
And to be clear, whatever decision is made in the state level doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate over to the federal level, but you have to imagine it'll have some sort of effect.
And Jesse, don't forget, Jesse, they followed him from the scene to the Starbucks.
No, I hear you.
DNA off that water. So there's other things.
We could always talk about everything else. All right, Mark Garagos, John Chell, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, Chris is going to be back tomorrow, and Leland Vittert starts right now. Hey there, Leland. How you doing?
Hey, how old's the little one?
Good. So I can't hear you, but it's okay. I see you. You look amazing, and I know you're going to have a great show. I'm going to hand it off to you. Good seeing you, man.
All right. Peace, brother. Great show yourself.